Now, first thing we need to talk about is, are these techniques going to be used in order to get somebody to do something that is against their will or their best interest? And the answer is no, we're not. But Jeff, you say things like Jedi mind trick and be able to get your way and be able to win over the opponent. That is correct. This is exactly what this is for. It does not, however, work to make somebody do something that doesn't eventually end up in their best interest. So in the next 6 classes, what you're going to figure out, and these all combine, by the way, is that everything we're talking about is on a positive side. You're never going to get somebody to be able to do something, no matter what word tracks you say, whatever little science I give you, however much we practice, to do something that's not in their interest. So this is all positive. And this is why I even think everybody on planet Earth should know these techniques, because it helps us move along society. So let me give you an example. I was going to use the example of a taxi cab, but I believe that it might be more relevant nowadays if I said something like Uber or Lyft. So let's say you're a driver for Uber, and your phone goes off and it says, pick up Mr. Dan Buter at his house in Claremont, California. Great, where's the destination? It's the local mall. What do? You pick up Mr. Dan Buter, you put him in your car, and you drive him to the mall. Okay, well, that's fine. But here's the question. What if we learned more information about why Dan Buter was going to the mall, or that mall in particular? Would it work in our benefit? We're not working against what his goals are. We're looking to extract information and get him on the same page when we have a better solution. So let's say I pull up to Mr. Dan Buter's house and he wants to go to the mall. And I ask Dan Buter some questions, and I uncover that Dan Buter is going to the mall because he wants to go to a bookstore to get his child a book he needs for school for a single report. You're funny, Dan. So we're going to go with the bookstore. It's more PC. So I asked Dan, why are you going to a bookstore? My son has a report. We need to, learn about Abraham Lincoln. So I'm going to go buy a book on Abraham Lincoln. And by the way, I do not actually know if any malls have bookstores anymore, but nonetheless. So if I was able to use questioning in a way that would open Dan up to where he would want to share and spill and basically puke information to me, I, as the professional Uber driver, might be able to help him make a smarter, better decision that would get him to his end goal, which is getting a book about Abraham Lincoln. Well, Jeff, how does this work? Well, simple. What if I asked Dan, and by the way, you're going to learn in another class, this is not the way you would ask it, but I'm going to go with casual conversation till we start teaching the actual way you should speak in just a moment. Dan, why are you going to the mall? I'm going to get my kid a book on Abraham Lincoln. Why are you going to buy a book if it's just for a report? How about we go to the library? Why would I go to the library? Well, let's go to the library because you have a library card and it's effectively free to take out a book, and you're only going to use it for a little while, and that supports the librarians, the city, and children reading. You know what? That's a good idea. Well, now we go to the library. Did I get what I wanted? I guess. Yes. Let's say the library was further away, so therefore the trip cost more and I made more money. Do you think my tip would be better because Dan Bueter just saved a bunch of money from buying a $28 hardback book on Abraham Lincoln when he could have checked one out for free? He doesn't care about paying a couple extra dollars in fare. This is the part we miss in everything we do in negotiations. We miss it in our interpersonal relationships, and we definitely miss it in real estate contract negotiations and negotiations with the other side. This boils down to your listing presentations, buyer presentations, dealing with the other agent, and anything else that you do. You are supposed to be the vessel that starts to uncover what the motivating factors are behind that person's wants and needs. Does that make sense? Okay. So you don't need to write this down because I'm going to tell you we're not going to use this word again. But the technique that I'm going to show you today is called isopartism. It has been around and studied since the 1930s. And it is the act and the science and the study that people fear things that are different and associate with things that are the same. Now, you might be asking, yes, Jeff, we learned this in elementary school. That's fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of what you learned was incorrect. People fear things that are different. That is the way that our amygdala is wired. It makes us nervous. That is the same reason why you're uncomfortable when you make a move and you move into a new house. Even though you're happy with it, it's not the same. It's the same reason why you drive a car, let's say for 10 years and it's paid off, and you decide to go buy a new one. You kind of miss your old car, and the new one takes a while to get used to. We like things that are similar. So the way this was always taught was to mimic the other party that we're speaking to. So if any of you have been around at least as long as I have, or we go back to the 70s and 80s of learning this, actually even in the 90s for me, taking a class from a professor I thought was hilarious, they talk about mimicking somebody. The person you're sitting across, the person you're on the phone with, you should mimic. If they're angry, you need to sound angry because that'll make them feel comfortable. So you start asking the question, if they speak slow, am I supposed to speak slow? Yes, I should speak slow. Then we start uncovering personality types. Well, if they're a type A, if they're a driver, we just need to get to the hard part first and they'll make a decision. If, they're an expressive, then we need to dance around it and make them feel good. All of this is semi-true. However, there is one thing that crosses all lines, regardless of what primary language is, regardless of country of origin, regardless of anything that's the same. All humans and studied mammals, by the way, like things that are the same. So I pose you this question. If you meet somebody that has an accent, are you supposed to duplicate their accent? No. Now, I've been taught that before. I don't think it's a good idea. It makes me feel weird. First off, if I go meet somebody from the South, I don't have a Southern accent. Why would I do that? Why would I try and speak with a Southern drawl if I don't have one? That seems insulting to me. God forbid we're dealing with somebody that has a speech impediment. What am I supposed to do? If I meet somebody that stutters, am I supposed to stutter too to make them feel better? No. But that is actually what used to be taught. Now, behavioral science, which was adopted by the FBI and honed over 20 years in hostage negotiation has taught us something that is so amazing. You're going to realize there are times you've done it anyway, but when you change and you do this deliberately, it will literally change your world today. And I do mean today, and you have to practice it. Is any part of this hard? Absolutely not. What is the problem? It feels weird to deliberately do. We are going to call it mirroring. Now, a mirror gives a reflection, and that's great. And I'm not talking about acting like the person you're in front of. Mirroring simply means being able to listen to somebody and repeat back the important part of what they said to them in a certain voice and a certain tonality in order to make them feel safe because they were listened to and understood. And it opens the door for them to give you additional information that we will take to class 2 next Monday. And by the end of this, I'm going to show you how to put it all together to where this is literally the only technique you actually have to use to be able to get what it is you need in your clients, the counterparts, and everybody's best interest. So let me show you how this works. Jorge calls me, or we meet up, and he says, Jeff, I've got a problem. I can't get my agents to join the meeting and come in person. I repeat back in a slow voice. Come in person. And then I shush. Being quiet after you repeat back the important part of the sentence or statement somebody said to you is the hardest thing for salespeople to do. We like to fill space with words. We like to be talking. It makes us feel like we're smart and we're being active. But the truth is, simply saying, getting them to come to meetings will allow Jorge to go, well, yeah, ever since COVID, agents don't come in, to the office as much. We have all this space. We buy donuts or whatever it is you do, Jorge. And, they just don't come in. They just don't come in. Right. Yeah, they just don't come in. We have some. You have some. Yeah, I get 22, but I used to get 40. You used to get 40? This is the part that makes you feel weird because we keep doing this until mentally we actually have a completely clear picture of exactly what his pain point is and how we can solve it. Because you've got to understand the motivation behind him making that statement may not be as clear as it seems. We have to be able to uncover things in order to negotiate. What I'm doing is information gathering. And all it takes is using a slow voice and using a tone that says, I don't completely understand, without saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand what the hell you're saying. What we're trying to do is repeat back with an upward inflection at the very last word of something important they said. So let me give you an example. You go to a listing appointment. You walk through, you decide on the price. You get to that wonderful line we all love where it says total commission. You write 6%. The seller says, that's a lot of money. What is your response? I've sat with agents on listing appointments that coach under every real estate coach ever, and they always get flustered. Yes, that's what I charge. That's what my company minimum is. I'm worth it. Well, what did you want to pay? Why, did you have a better offer? that opens you up to be able to give away the farm and not get paid correctly for representing your clients. Now, if you turn it around and you write 6% on that listing contract, and the buyer said, or sorry, the seller says, wow, 6%, that's a lot of money. And you ask, a lot of money? And once again, you're quiet. What are they going to do? They're going to give you information. They're going to tell you, it just seems like a lot because I've seen signs on the curbs all around the areas where I go shopping that says I can sell my house for 1.5%. Sell your house for 1.5%? Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to them, but I see the signs. You see the signs? Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but my sister is a real estate agent in another state, and you know, she said she takes listings for 2%. 2%? Well, yeah. Will you do it for 2%? Okay. Now we know where they're getting their information from without having to ask the question of where the hell did you come up with that figure and why do you think 6% is too much money? And as we walk through these 6 classes, you're going to see, and especially guys, all of you need to be on class 2, because the second step to this, when we actually get the resolution and we figure out what their pain point is, I'm going to show you how to overcome it without having to handle objection handling with snappy comebacks. Because I can teach you 100 of those. I mean, I can teach you my favorite one that I used forever until I actually started using this technique and it works so well, I abandoned the others. But 6%, that's a lot of money. The one I used to use, and Dan's going to laugh at this because we actually used to do this together. Yes, it is a lot of money. And all my clients say that before they list their home with me and get it sold. I'm telling you right now, using the mirror of repeating back what the person said in an upward reflection, in a slow voice, will absolutely pull out all of the information. Now, here's what I need you to think about and keep in mind. There has been a lot of research done. Do you understand and do you know and are you aware that the high tier of intelligence can only hold 7 thoughts in their mind at once? 7 focal points. Orhan is a different story. I think he does about 48 at any given moment, but that's fine. We're not all built like him. For me, I'm like one-track mind. I got one thing and that's it until I get that done. But the most is 7. The average is 4. So here's what I want you to think about. When you are across the table on the phone with somebody and you're having a discussion and you're negotiating, what are you thinking about? Well, most of the time you're thinking about what they're going to say, how you're going to react, what you're going to say next, and maybe what's for dinner. Your brain's full. What is the other party thinking about? They're thinking about, is this guy going to try and take me? Am I going to get a good deal? Is this going to work out? Am I making the right decision? Their brain is full. Guess what's not happening? Neither of you are listening to each other. Neither. You're not listening. Has anybody heard the adage that's been around forever, I guess? There's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, because you should listen twice as much and speak half. Okay? Everybody's heard that, I think. I think it's been around and everybody had it said to them, and I think there's memes on Facebook. It doesn't matter that you're quiet. That doesn't mean you're listening, because you're still trying to process. The reason why this mirroring technique is so hard is because it feels unnatural when you do it deliberately. But if you do exactly what I said, where you repeat back after every sentence and statement, back to the person, the most important parts of what they said, they're going to understand that they're being listened to, and it will actively force you to listen to them. Then you get the actual information you can use to problem solve and get them and yourself to where you need to be on a deal. So I'm going to give you another example. Most people can relate to having children or being around children or watching children on a sitcom. What is one thing every parent seems to always have to negotiate with their kid? Bedtime, eating the food that's on your plate. We're always in negotiations. Always. Whether it's you and your spouse deciding what movie or what restaurant to go to. Whether it's deciding what shoes to wear with your suit. One of my favorite stories ever. It's used in one of the books this is taken from. Husband has a important interview with Orhan, and he pulls out his favorite blue suit. And the husband prefers to wear brown shoes with a blue suit. But the wife thinks that black shoes look better with a blue suit because it's more uniformish. So they argue back and forth, and they decide, like I watch too many of you agents do, to split the difference. We'll meet halfway. So what does the husband do? He wears one brown shoe and one black shoe. Either one of the other two options would have been better. Sometimes when you make that special casserole, broccoli, cheese, whatever, and your kid doesn't want to eat it, but you know your kid needs to eat, sometimes it's better to go ahead and fold and make them Kraft mac and cheese or chicken nuggets or whatever it is. Sometimes it's better to be able to hold your ground because it's in their best interest. But you don't know what path to take until you uncover all the information of why they're trying to make the decision they are. So let me give you a couple things that I want you to think about. The first part of the mirroring, the intention is to be able to slow down the conversation. People get very, 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 very antsy and nervous when they're going into a negotiation, especially for sales. I don't know about you. There's one thing I absolutely despise, and that's going and buying a car. I hate it. People are nervous. I'm nervous when I buy a car. Any of you bought and sold a house for yourself? Do you realize you've done this for hundreds of people as a profession, but when you do it, you get nervous? This is what happens. People are nervous. What happens when people are nervous? They speak faster. Research has shown that California, on a whole, speaks at a 98 beat per minute tempo when somebody is deliberately giving information and listening. Okay? I am somebody who naturally speaks about 400 miles an hour, and my mouth doesn't keep up with what I want to say. When I slow down, it's deliberate. I know people who speak overly slow and actually have to actively speed up their speech pattern. But the idea is that if somebody's hot-headed, how do they speak? Do they say, I'm so angry about them not accepting our counter offer? No, they speak like any of us would. I am so dang angry about them not accepting my counter offer. What do they think they are? It's a reasonable offer. What are we going to do? Your job is to slow it down. And that is to literally slow yourself down, take a breath, and go, okay, you're angry? Yeah, I'm really angry because now we're worried we're not going to get the house. Not get the house? Well, yeah, they want too much money for it, and then they're not going to accept our offer, and they're probably going to get another offer, and then we're not going to get another offer. Well, yeah, okay. So what do you think we should do? Well, I'm not paying $550,000 for this house. I know some of you are laughing like, where can you find a house for $550,000? Come out to where I live. There are some still. $550,000 for a house? There's no way in heck. No way? Well, you know what? I guess we're qualified. You know what? Never mind. We'll take it and we'll do it for $550,000. We're done. All you did was ask and all you did was repeat their questions like you were asking them slowly to calm them down. They think through and solve their own problems. The best part of negotiation, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what situation it is, if you do this stuff that I'm going to teach you correctly, including starting with this mirroring, people generally solve their own problems. And guess what? That allows them to be in charge. And when they're in charge, they stick to their decisions and they have conviction. Because do you know there's a psychological part that we all have, that when we make a decision, we have to justify it? Every one of us has it. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, or where you're from, how you were raised, how old you are, how young you are, what gender you are, nothing. We always have to justify our decisions. So if we've made the decision, we're going to find every reason there is on planet Earth to justify it. This is why it's so important to be able to lead somebody down the path to the solution that best benefits them without us compromising on something that we actually need to be able to do our job. If your child wants to stay up all night, but they have to go to school in the morning, you know that's not in their best interest, nor yours, and you need to find a way to get them to go to bed. Now, some of us can yell at our kid and tell them just get in bed, and we do it. But there's another way when you use this even on children. And I like to use a story that I've got a 13-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter now at the house. I use this with them constantly. Because when I uncover why they're acting, why they want a certain thing, I'm able to find a solution that works for everybody. Such as 13-year-old boy doesn't want to go to bed because he wants to stay up all night gaming with friends. Fantastic. But you know you have school tomorrow. So we talk. I mirror until he decides on his own that it's probably better that he goes to bed and that he can play after school online with his friends on Tuesday. And I literally had this conversation just a week ago, ladies and gentlemen. But my son solved it for himself. I never demanded anything. And guess what? When he made the decision himself, that meant he went and brushed his teeth. That meant he went and put on pajamas. That meant he went and laid in bed. And that meant he went to sleep. And there was no argument in the house. We don't have to argue. You got to remember, this is not an adversarial job that we're in, even though we make it out that way so often. It's not adversarial. Now, we use things like opponent or counterpart or the person we're negotiating with. But the idea is, guys, you are in the absolute best position of anybody who has to negotiate anything on planet Earth. You have buyers that want to buy a house, sellers who want to sell a house, a listing agent that wants to get a commission, and a buyer's agent that wants to get a commission. There's no better setup. Imagine if you were a hostage negotiator where somebody wanted to rob a bank and took people hostage, didn't want to go to jail, and wanted to take $7 million. We're not in that situation. This stuff is easy. So I'm going to teach you the rest of the techniques that they use in order to negotiate hostages. I'm going to teach you the rest of the behavioral science behind why it works. And you're going to be able to come away super easy with one note. Repeat back the person said. And then just wait till next week when I show you, once we get to the end of what all of their thoughts are, how we can wrap it up like that. Like that. It's really amazing. That class is going to have a little bit more information, a little bit longer. This was sort of written as an introduction. Now, I've got the chat open, or the ask a question, the Q&A. for those of you I see on the screen on Teams are the only people I can see. Mr. Darren, if you'd help me, does anybody have any questions that I can answer before we end? All right, well, I wait to see if any of that. Here's what I want you to, Orhan, can you type it in? I won't be able to hear you. You're on mute. And I'm not sure you can unmute yourself. Darren. All right, so while we're talking about this and we're waiting for Orhan's question, let me explain to you how you practice this. Any of you that are in the office, find somebody to talk to and ask them a question. And when they respond to you, repeat the last part of the important part they said to them and watch how much more they speak. Watch how much more they speak and keep going. Keep going. This is the funny part. Because you're doing it deliberately and you know you're doing it, you're going to feel weird. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The person on the other end doesn't know you're doing it. And what's hilarious is I've taught versions of this class, the whole thing we're going to teach in like little sections and like, you know, 1-day events. I teach it and turn around and use everything I'm going to teach you on the people as we're doing the class, after we finish the class, and for the rest of my relationship with them, and they never know what's happening. I mean, just to be honest, I use it on Orhan. I use it on Dan. For those of you who see Dan. I use it with everybody. All right. Perfect. Orhan, I can hear you now. You got a question?
No question?
Oh, yeah. The question is regarding the, can you hear me?
Come here and probably you have to come close to the microphone.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Question was regarding the mimicking, and should you go as far as to mimic the gestures? When I did the Cal communication theory class, you talked about not only do you try to mimic their tone, but their gestures and almost mirror their entire aura.
So this is the way that I found that it works the best. I am me. You are you, they are they. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. I don't like trying to imitate somebody. I have found it so useful simply being able to show and slowly repeat the important part like I showed, that they get comfort, and I will instinctively start to actually be in sync with them. Now, I'll give you an example of that one. You guys ever watched a couple that's in love taking a walk? I know it's a weird question, but if you actually watch, they adjust the rate that they walk, where they position their hands, and their gestures to be the same. It happens unintentionally. So what I like to concentrate on is getting the person to feel comfortable because they're being listened to, because I am actually listening to them. I'm giving them feedback on it, and I'm digging for information. That doesn't mean like I'm a hand talker. I'm one of these guys. Like when you guys see me in real life, and I'm also a pacer. I much prefer, I'm sitting on a chair right now. I would much prefer to be able to do this while pacing in circles on my house. I wouldn't be expecting you to pace in circles in the house following me in order to make this work.
I was showing of a couple open houses today.
Okay.
At 11/125. How do I find that? Oh, okay. And then the other is a new build, 726.
So the new ones, you can't show them because they're under construction.
I was told that I could look through the window when I called the sales guy.
Peter, Peter, could you mute yourself, please?
Can't drive back there though, so you have
Well,
to.
I'm sorry, guys. This
Peter,
is one thing
your-
about.
Your microphone is on.
I think, no, he's muted now. This is one thing about technology, guys. It's not always great. If we were in a room together, I can shush somebody. I like to give people grief for having their cell phones ring during meetings, so it's all good. Mine's probably gone off 10 times, but it's muted. All right, any other questions?
Hey, Jeff, we had a question here and I thought it was actually, might be useful. So what happens if they don't answer back? You ask the question, they just kind of stare at you.
So far in, what is it? I don't remember how many years I've been working with this, 15 years, something like that. I've never had that happen. And I will be able next week to show you what you could do should that happen. And it's also the same thing we do once we've mirrored enough to where we've gotten enough information to be able to move forward, how we resolve that and move into the next step, which is, in our case, getting ink on paper or getting a real yes. But I'll be able to explain that on Monday. And I'll show you how it works, and I'll show you the example. And, you know, Edwin, I'm going to ask you to remind me, because that's, like I said, that's not something that I've ever seen happen. But remind me of that, and I'll address that completely point blank with an example. Ladies and gentlemen, next week is going to be regarding extracting the information until we see where somebody's pain point is. And then how we turn that pain point into something that makes the person say, I agree. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. And this is going to be called labeling their pain. And there's 3 different versions of how to do it. And you're going to like this, because sometimes we want to label their pain incorrectly to force more information. Sometimes we want to label it correctly so that we can solve it. And then there's a mystery third one that I'm not going to tell you anything about until we get together on Monday. So I hope you all will join me, and I hope this first little tidbit was beneficial. But your assignment is, today, while you talk to people, try mirroring. See what happens. It's the most interesting thing in the entire world, and you will not believe it until you actually deliberately do it. And you guys do it subconsciously, just not often enough. Try it. They always talk about, how do you become the most interesting person in the room? Ask people questions. Watch what happens. You want to read the book, you know, How to Make Friends and Influence People? This is the shortcut, ladies and gentlemen. We listen to somebody, we repeat back, show we're listening. They regurgitate more information to us that we can use for good and that we can use to help. And this works in every situation. It is the most important communication tool we possibly have. And it requires no script. It requires no memorization. It requires nothing other than using it in real life. And I promise you, any one of you could turn around and do it to me right now, and I wouldn't even be aware you were doing it. And I just finished teaching a class about it. Anything else before we end? All right, I'm going to take that as no. Everybody, I'm available at any time that you need me, so please reach out. And I'm looking forward to getting you through the next 5 and the last class, which is class 6. We wrap up the entire scenario on how each of the techniques that we're going to be talking about work together to win what you need every time. Thank you all.